Nope, Caitlin, I think you're on mute.
Hear me now?
Yes.
All right, sweet. Thank you. All right. So, as we said, my name is Caitlin Reilly. I was going to talk a little bit about my experience 10 years ago, today, and tomorrow, which is probably my next slide. So 10 years ago, where were we? Today, where are we? And where do we want to be 10 years from now? And to start, talking a little bit about me, 10 years ago, I was a member of the America's Wetland Conservation Corps, which is a program of, or was a program of the AmeriCorps family, AmeriCorps state, and it allowed me to work on coastal restoration projects through LSU Ag Center. And in the midst of my time doing that program, the Deepwater Horizon oil spill, the explosion and the oil spill happened. And so I had a huge opportunity come out of that for me to get a full-time position with the agency I was working for, the Ag Center, and continue on with them for a few years after the oil spill beyond my AmeriCorps term, and do some work with coastal restoration ongoingly, which was really fun for me. It was something I was really passionate about at the time, and it was a great experience to have. So now I'm hoping y'all will tell me a little bit about where you were 10 years ago. Anyone want to unmute and talk a little bit about where they were 10 years ago? I see some people thinking about it. Yeah.
Yeah. I know for me, I was here in the coast off of Alabama. So I was, I don't know, 10 years ago, I would have been 12 years old. So I was mostly, I guess, in middle school. And yeah, I remember the oil spill, but I don't remember like the details and stuff. I just remember
Mhm.
being the scary thing that like my parents were talking about.
Yeah, absolutely. Anybody else around that same age? 12? I've heard y'all were like 18 to 25 in your cohort. So other people in school, were you in school at the time, or anyone were you all in the Gulf region at that time? Yes, maybe, no?
I was in middle
No?
school.
I was here.
You were in middle school? Where were you in middle school?
I was on the coast. I was just Africa Time Mobile.
Okay.
So 10th grade, I feel like we just ended spring break. Oh
yeah, it was just after, it was actually the day I agreed to do this presentation was the 10-year anniversary of the start of the oil spill. And when I started looking into your program, I saw that the settlement that came at the end of the oil spill is what partially pays for the work you do today, which I thought was a pretty interesting connection, because I don't think about the oil spill very often anymore. But I'm friends with Larissa on Facebook, and she mentioned that she was looking for speakers to come and talk to her Gulf Corps group. And I said I would be potentially interested. And the day she wrote back to me was actually the 10-year anniversary of the start of the oil spill. Which kind of blew my mind. And actually, I reached out to my old supervisor at the time to check in with him. And it's kind of interesting because my next slide is somewhere. Nope, not here. So today, 10 years. So 10 years ago, a lot of you were in school. I was down working in the Gulf. I'm originally from the Bronx, New York. And so I was a transplant at the time, and I'm a transplant again. So today I'm here at the Chico Creek Nature Center. And interestingly enough, we're in the middle of a whole nother different scale of disaster 10 years later. And all of you, as far as I know, are in the Gulf Corps group. And I just got to reflecting on the history of that time 10 years ago, and there were actually a lot of opportunities for me around that time to do different professional development and training opportunities. And it sounds like there's some opportunities for y'all right now in doing different trainings. Carrie was telling me that y'all are doing different online trainings So I was wondering like where y'all want to be. That's my next slide. If I can, oh, I keep switching around here. Where do we want to go? So when I called my old boss, he talked to me about his experience because I first moved to Louisiana. It was after the huge hurricane, Hurricane Katrina, which was many years ago now, 15 years ago. And he tells the story often about getting into a car accident and having someone being super calm talking to him, and he was like, how do you stay so calm? And the guy said, you just have to think about these things in the long-term view, the 5 to 7 year view. And since it was 10 years since the oil spill started, and we're in the middle of this next disaster, and I was thinking about like, what am I going to do and where am I going to go, and what opportunities are there for me at this time? And so I decided personally to start applying to graduate school because that's going to help me take the next step. I have a bachelor's degree. I've been running this nature center for a while, and that will help me get to my next steps of advancing my career. And so I wanted to ask all of you, like, where are you right now and what opportunities do you see in the midst of this current disaster to help you be where you want to be 10 years from now? Because there's an old Chinese saying, in every crisis, there is opportunity. So I think it's important that when we have something really complicated like COVID going on, we try to, live in the moment as much as we can, but also take that time to step back and think about where you want to go and how you can direct your path even when unexpected things are happening, because they happen so often, right? I just talked about Katrina was 15 years ago, the oil spill was 10 years ago, COVID is right now. There's going to be something else coming down the line. Once COVID is over, there's going to be more unforeseen things. So how do we plan our lives in the midst of all of that? And so I was just wondering to hear from all of you, like where you're at and where you're hoping to go, what your interests are, and what you'd like to do 10 years from now. And sometimes it's better to think 5 years from now, but just start thinking about like, what are your opportunities right now that can lead you somewhere that you want to go in the future?
Did you want us to openly talk?
Yeah. Oh, sorry. Maybe I should be more clear. Yeah. So I'd like to hear from y'all actually about like what you're doing right now and what you see as opportunities that could come out of that for your future.
Well, this is my second job with a conservation type group. Before this, I had a AmeriCorps position with a local nonprofit, a local environmental nonprofit. And that's actually how I got into contact with doing this position here, doing conservation field work. And I'd be looking within the next 5 to 10 years, hopefully having an actual career in the conservation field. I'm really not all that picky, considering the conservation field's really like flip-floppy. You never really know what you're going to end up doing. Because, well, the nice thing is people have to realize that you can have the opportunity to do a lot of things, even though you don't necessarily see yourself doing those things. Like, I never imagined myself, like, I have a BS in marine biology, and I never imagined, like, doing, like, nonprofit environmental work and then doing, like, conservation field work, like, not in the water. And now, like, the experiences that I've had, I want to go into a conservation type position, hopefully dealing with either fire or with marine creatures, just because the fire portion of our job is very interesting.
Yeah, fire ecology is huge, and it's a topic that we deal with a lot here, obviously in California, trying to manage prescribed burns and looking at what time of year we can do those. And with the way that the climate has been acting the last few years, we've been looking at moving a lot of our burning from the fall after it started to rain to the spring. And so there's interesting studies going on right now looking at the different effects, because traditionally people did a lot of prescribed burning in the fall, but with the fire season being so dangerous and there being so few burn days here in the fall right now, they're starting to study the effects of burns in the spring, because California has a lot of wildfires, but also wildflowers. And they're very seasonal in their nature and are affected by the fires, obviously. So burning in the spring when the flowers are coming up, how does that affect them? Not only in year one when you do the fire, but years going on is a really interesting topic that they're looking at here. So right now I'm the director of the Chico Creek Nature Center. I don't do a ton of conservation work directly. We work with young children, getting them to have that bonding experience with nature and comfortable outdoors. But when I worked in Louisiana, I did coastal restoration projects. So I propagated grasses with volunteers from all over the country. New Orleans got a lot of college students coming on alternative breaks, high school students coming through those programs, church groups and other businesses coming through and doing service programs. So I managed a lot of those groups and learned some managerial skills through having that opportunity, and then started to move into the work I do at the Nature Center, which originally involved more of the direct education, and I might be going back to some of that through my master's path. But right now I do a lot of administrative work, so budgets and spreadsheets and managing money and people and timelines is a huge part of what I do. And it's interesting because my goal was to have a nature-related, outdoor education-related career, but it can be very difficult to do the field work and have a long-term sustainable career. So I focus a lot on the administrative side of things so that I have this full-time job that allows me to support my family. Anybody else want to talk about what they're working on right now and how they see that benefiting their future?
I was going to do a quick aside if no one was going to say anything really quick.
What's that?
I was going to ask something really quick if no one
Yeah.
wanted to speak immediately. Chico is relatively close to Paradise, isn't it?
Yeah, Paradise is directly up the hill from us within 25, less than that, within 20 miles. The fire that burned out Paradise burned all the way up to the edge of Chico.
That's what I was going to ask. I was going to ask how close it actually got to Chico.
Within a couple miles of Chico. And I lived in Oroville at the time, which is a town, like, it's kind of a triangle, like Chico's up here, Oroville's down here, and Paradise is over here. And so I lived over here, and me and my husband decided to evacuate during the fire because we were right on the border of where the evacuation was, and we weren't mandated to evacuate, but we thought it would be safer for us. And my husband lived through the Oakland fires when he was a kid. He's from California, and so it was a very scary experience for him to be so close to such a large fire. And it had a really significant impact here. Environmental quality was a huge effect immediately with the smoke situation. We had a couple of fires happening nearby. We also had the lake fire, which wasn't nearly as famous, but actually led to a lot of smoke blowing into our area. And so it had some pretty significant effects on us that season. That was right after the car fire too. We had a huge fire season that year.
Well, if no one else wants to talk, I know for me, I want to go into kind of a land management kind of area, and preparing for that is kind of like just a collection of knowledge and just like getting to know the ecosystems around here and like getting to know every aspect of it. And so this virus has actually been kind of a like a silver lining a little bit as far as taking a step back and actually being given time to learn and like take that. So I've actually, I've been able to study a lot more than I would have been able to when I was working full time out in the field. So this hasn't been too sore.
Cool.
Yeah, and then
Someone
I know
else?
like I'm interested in like the GIS aspect, and Carrie's been having us learn that, and we've been doing some modules for that, so that's been interesting too. And that's something I know we can use in the future with a lot of different jobs.
Yeah, absolutely. That is a great career skill to be developing. when I was in Louisiana, when I was in my AmeriCorps year, one of my goals for the year was to get as many certifications as possible. So I did environmental education certifications. I did other types of, like I did a prescribed burn certification, various trainings and things like that, which helped build up my portfolio, and it enabled me to be able to have a lot of experiences under my belt to put on my resume toward moving forward. So I think it's really a great opportunity for y'all to be able to take different classes right now during the virus and be able to put those toward your future educational goals. Absolutely. Or academic or career goals. Yeah, let's see. Grad school application. I'm just looking at your chat comments here. Wow. Cody. Yeah, I mean, national park system and national agencies, federal agencies are a great place to get your foot in. There's a lot of opportunities within the federal system for land management related positions and conservation related positions. I'm working right now on the California Naturalist certification. I don't know if Alabama has a Master Naturalist program, but if you're ever in an area that has a Master Naturalist or Naturalist certification program, it's done through the Extension Service. In California, it's UCANR. I don't know who the Extension University is in Alabama. But what it does is it's a course specifically focused on interpreting and learning to interpret and teach interpretation of the natural world to students. So it's a college level course, community college level gen ed course that focuses on the natural history of California. And if there's a natural certification in your area, that's a great. Oh, look at that mess. She just shared it in the. I just shared it in the chat. So that's a great opportunity to get more training. I don't know if yours in your state qualifies you for college credit or just a certification that you would have, but if you're interested in the more interpretive side of things, that's a great credential to have. It's usually a semester long type of course. Great place to put your attention. And they have them in states all over the country too, but that's a really good opportunity. Because collecting all these little things and putting them on your resume can help you to stand out. And then when you look at a job application, you can sort of pick and choose. You know, if it's more of an interpretation related field, you can put those educational certifications on there. If it's more of a land management type of focus, you know, work like you're doing, or the GIS work that you're doing online, or the more physical work that you've been doing out in the field with prescribed burns, is all really good stuff to have experience in at this time. Yeah, I see some stuff about grad school, COVID putting things on shaky ground. Yeah, it's definitely a great time to be considering school if that's something you see in your career path, whether it's academic education or more of a technical field that you want to pursue, and more job training type of stuff, because it is going to be several years before things get back to normal completely, I think, both health-wise and economically right now. Master Naturalist. So there's a Mississippi, and there's Alabama Master Naturalist program. Very cool. Anyone else want to jump in and talk about where their career goals are and where they see themselves in 10 years or 5 years or next year?
I guess my main career goal, where I see myself in 10 years, is I'm actually originally from Western New York, south of Buffalo. But yeah, I want to get like a career eventually in upstate New York somewhere, either the Adirondacks or the Finger Lakes or Western New York or the Catskills. preferably either as like a park manager for like the New York State Office of Parks, Recreation, and Historic Preservation, or possibly like a forester, or possibly a forest ranger. I scored pretty high on the civil service test. I don't know exactly what I want to do out there yet. Like maybe my degree's in wildlife, so like I like a wildlife technician too would be like an awesome job as well, like permanent but not in the office.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's what I want to do eventually, just getting there. I'm not exactly sure how to go about that. Yeah, and I haven't narrowed down like specifically what I want to do either. Like if I'm going to be a forest ranger, I should probably focus on like fire stuff, and I do enjoy fire stuff. Like if I want to be a wildlife tech too, I should like probably try and get my master's. Or if I want to go in like the wildlife direction, or like park manager, I'm not sure I could get my master's or do fire. I don't know. In the short term, I have no idea what I'm doing, but long term, I have a plan.
That's cool. Yeah, I mean, and I've found in my life that I didn't really have up until this point like a long-term plan. To be honest, I had no plan of becoming a director of a nature center. My ex-partner, his family was from this area, and we decided to move here together. His family has a real estate business, and so we knew he could work for them when we got here. I came here with no job plan whatsoever. And was able to start working at the nature center first as the front desk person, then as an office person. Well, actually, at the very beginning, I was a volunteer. So I showed up and started looking for things to do, and running the nature center seemed like a cool idea. And they had 2 positions posted. They had a volunteer position and they had an executive director position, and I applied for both. And they were not super stoked about hiring me to be the executive director. I was like 28 and hadn't ever run an agency before. And so they hired me to be a volunteer, and then consistently gave me various promotions from volunteer to front desk, from front desk to office manager, and from office manager, when the like 5th executive director they had hired within a couple of years left, I had the opportunity to become the executive director. And they just kind of like, we'll let you try this and see what happens. And thankfully for everybody, it worked out really well. I seem to be pretty decent at it. And so networking is a huge piece of how my career path has continued to flourish. And I joined a networking group for leaders of nonprofits and government agencies. And through that, met the woman who is my general manager now, the head of the Parks and Rec district in our area, and negotiated with her for the nature center to become part of Chico Area Recreation and Park District. And so instead of it being so it was a nonprofit organization on land leased from the city that we've initially put a management agreement in place. So the city owned the land, the nonprofit owned or had leased to the buildings, and then there was a management agreement with the recreation district to employ all the staff and run all the operations. And then over time, we were able to phase out the nonprofit because it was considered to be an extra layer. They had to have insurance and things like that. And when the staff didn't work for them anymore, it didn't really make sense for that layer to continue. So that networking piece of getting to know the general manager of the recreation district through a professional organization, and then working with her one-on-one to be able to negotiate first the management agreement and then the final fold in of the nature center, was really important to where we are now with the nature center, because one of my goals was for it to be sustainable after I left. A lot of times small organizations are very dependent on a particular person in the leadership role. And so I still work at the nature center and I really like my job there, but being that it's folded into a larger agency, it'll have more security when at some point I probably will move on. I'm probably not going to stay there for another 20, 30 years. That's not where I see myself. But I started down this road of explaining this to say that sometimes I'm asking you, where do you want to be in 10 years, and that can seem like a huge daunting question. And but just because you don't have an answer doesn't mean you're not going to end up somewhere that's really exciting to you. If you just follow what the next right thing is for you in your career path, and focus on building good connections with people, focus on building your background in areas where you have opportunities to study and learn things, and continue to look for opportunities that seem exciting and interesting to you. You'll find that things have a natural way of progressing in your career, and just looking, like casting a wide net and looking for a lot of opportunities. Not all of them are going to come together and make sense, but the right ones will fall into place. Also, if you're looking at going back to New York, I did an internship that was really cool up there on the Hudson River with a sailboat called the Hudson River Sloop Clearwater. And they sail up and down the Hudson River and do environmental education with kids. So if you're interested in the education side at all, it's a really good organization. They're always looking for volunteers and interns for semester to work on the boat, and you live on the boat and they feed you. When I was on, it was amazing food. And then you sail up and down the river and you take kids on 3-hour field trips and teach them about the river. And they teach you everything you need to know about the educational stuff that you do, and they also teach you about sailing the boat. So I had never been on a sailboat before or gone sailing before, but I had done some environmental education. And so I applied to be one of their interns and was able to spend a couple months sailing up and down the river and teaching kids about the river, which was a really cool experience. So just looking for those opportunities, and sometimes they're going to be small things, especially right now when you're coming out of this program. You might just be piecing together the beginning of something. Before I started in AmeriCorps, I worked for a really small nonprofit that could only pay me very part-time. So my other job was wearing a sandwich board. So I would walk around downtown New Orleans and hand out menus to people because I wanted to do the environmental work, but I couldn't get a full-time position doing it. So I took the part-time position that I was able to get, and then found other things that, you know, weren't my passion, but helped me pay the bills so that I could continue down that road. And the experience that I got in the small nonprofit helped me to get into AmeriCorps, and AmeriCorps helped me to get to the position that I had with LSU Ag Center as an extension associate. And then, well, that's funny.
I was just reflecting that I did the same thing. I had to work at Starbucks and kind of deal with they weren't recycling, and I had to eventually quit because I was like, I can't do this. It's against everything. But yeah, it was just funny to hear that because I had to take a huge pay cut to do that AmeriCorps position, but it was totally worth it.
Yeah, so looking for opportunities, and if you can sometimes take opportunities that seem in some ways like a step back, but that will help you move forward in the long run. I mean, you just have to balance, you know, what the best opportunity for you is, and sometimes it's going to be that part-time thing that leads into something more substantial in the future. You know, some of you are thinking about going back to college or going to grad school. You know, that's a big investment to make, but hopefully in the end, if you've chosen wisely and placed your thesis or your project well, it can be a huge stepping stone for your future. And same thing with technical certifications, you know, getting trained to do field work of different kinds that doesn't involve a strong academic component can be super effective at having a stable career in the outdoors. And so it just depends on where you want to wind up, you know, what the next right step for you is going to be. So spending some time, in emergency situations, there's a huge rush to just figure out what is at this moment the next thing to do. And it's important to just pull back a little bit and try to see the long-term view as well. And then that can help you to direct yourself through, sometimes might seem like a step back, but it's really, you know, a step to the side to move forward in another way. All right, who else wants to talk about what's their goal or where they see themselves moving on to next? All right, not all at once now. Slow down. You're gonna go?
I honestly don't know what I want to do for future reference, but I'm trying to work towards something. I'm trying to be an artist and have something going until able to go back to school.
Yeah, career in art is a challenging career, definitely, but can be very rewarding as well if you're doing something you really are passionate about and enjoy, and can share with other people and they get enjoyment out of it. That is, and just knowing like what the right thing for you is an important piece of making those kind of decisions.
I mean, I know kind of what I want to do, research or education or both, possibly going back to grad school, but I don't know what I want to specialize in. And right now, the whole hiring process and job search has been completely halted. So I'm with Eric a little bit. I don't know where my next step is, but it's all right. So
That's
we'll
okay.
figure it out.
Yeah. As I said, it's not always critical that you know exactly what you want to do. Sometimes life is a process of figuring out what you don't want to do by trying different things. And I was like, well, it's not this and it's not that, and I don't want to focus here. But then you find something in the process of trying a lot of stuff. I've had a lot of different jobs over the years. I briefly sold car wax in Boston at gas stations. And they were really about making money as like this huge opportunity. That was right before I moved to New Orleans, and I didn't move to New Orleans on purpose. I was just going to go for a couple of weeks and volunteer, and ended up really enjoying New Orleans. But the car wax thing was so interesting because they wanted you to be really pumped about making lots of money and all this money that you could make doing this like pyramid scheme type of company. And I absolutely hated it. Like everything about it was awful. And I had sold memberships for the zoo for a long time when I was in high school and college, and I really enjoyed that. So the skills transferred, and I was able to sell car wax really easily to people, but I felt terrible doing it. It's like convincing people to take out their credit card and give me money for this weird stuff that was making my hands feel like they were going to fall off. It really was gross stuff. And so after about a week of selling car wax and living with a friend of mine who worked for the car wax company, I decided to get on a Greyhound bus and go to New Orleans. And because they talked a lot about opportunities, and I had gotten laid off from my job in New York, which I also hated. I did not like being in a big office building in Manhattan, never seeing the sunlight. And so I got laid off. I quit the car wax job, and I bought a Greyhound bus ticket to New Orleans. I think I just bought a one-way ticket and started heading south on Greyhound. And it was through that process that I discovered the other young people that were working post-Katrina in different volunteer programs, and started working in an agency that did all different kinds of recovery work. And through that found the wetlands restoration program that they were doing. And through that found their partner agency that only focused on wetland restoration, which was during the time I worked as a sandwich board for the coffee shop, which wasn't so bad, honestly. Being a sandwich board is not the worst job I've ever had by any means. It was pretty cool. Didn't pay great, but it definitely got me fed and rent paid for the time that I needed it before I was able to join AmeriCorps, which is where I was able to work full-time doing wetland restoration in Louisiana, and do educational programming as part of the restoration projects that I did. And I really enjoyed that aspect of things. So when I moved to California, I had a better sense that I wanted to do something related to the environment, related to education. I had done the internship on the Clearwater. And so that all kind of led me to discovering my career path and participating with the Nature Center and wanting to work at the Nature Center. And I think my dream job would be the head of education program in a larger agency. but those jobs, it takes a long time to build your way. And my degree is in religious studies, which has nothing to do with anything that I do, other than in the most abstract way you can imagine. So it's just a process of trying stuff and sort of wiggling it down. At least for me, that's what my career path has been trying different things and finding, okay, I like this aspect of this job, but not these aspects. And so I'm going to look for something that focuses more on this area. And now I'm looking at going to grad school, getting a degree in interdisciplinary studies, so I can take some public administration type of classes, as well as some education classes, because I'm interested in the managerial and administrative aspect of environmental education. And that's kind of where I've come to in my career at this point. And I hope to continue to advance in this general field over the next 10 years is kind of my goal. But it's definitely not a bad thing to be honest and open about not knowing exactly what you want to do, because I think it's a rare thing that people know, and especially people that are on the type of path that you're on, to know at your age or really younger exactly what you want to do, because in my experience, school doesn't give you a lot of real world experience of trying different careers. And so you have to go out and get different jobs and try different stuff, and then you actually get a sense of like, okay, so this is what this would be like. Do I want to keep doing this, or do I want to look for some other area that I could work in that would be more in line with my passion? So I would strongly suggest taking the opportunities you have through the program you're in right now to get different certifications, and learn what you like and what you don't like, so that you can refine where you want to go, so that your career path becomes a series of choices that you're making about what you want to do, and you're interviewing potential employers just as much as they're interviewing you, so that you are looking at what aspects of this position am I going to enjoy, and where is it going to be really challenging or boring to me, and is it a good balance for me to move forward? Is it going to have enough of what I'm going to be excited and passionate about to really keep me interested and fulfilled in the long term? So I strongly suggest you look for those opportunities to get different kind of training and different kind of experiences. If it seems like it might be fun or interesting, give it a shot. That's sort of how I've wound up where I am today. Very far away from the Gulf of Mexico, but still connecting back with people who are doing work to protect those ecosystems and help them be a resource to future generations.
Yeah, and Caitlin, to tie on with you're talking about like opportunities for trainings. I know we've talked to the group about the wet wild, and I know there's one other one, but I know Larissa's been talking to you. Yeah, I know Larissa's been talking to you about that. I wanted to see if you could just share a little bit about what that program looks like, because I think we're going to try to set that up with our folks soon.
Cool. So Projects WET, Project Wild, and Project Learning Tree are 3 nationally recognized environmental education curriculum. I've been lucky enough to become a trainer in all of them, because mostly what I do is train other educators who actually work with children. So I train teachers, pre-service students, people like yourselves who might have an interest in going out and doing informal education in the future, whether it be through a government agency or a nonprofit, or going back and being in a traditional classroom setting. And so those programs, their main philosophy is how to think, not what to think, and using critical environmental education topics to help students to become more effective critical thinkers. And so Project WILD is focused on wildlife, and the WILD is the acronym Wildlife and Learning Design. So they're interdisciplinary curriculum that bring wildlife or forestry or the watershed into your classroom and give you different directions to train or to teach your students about it through. So right now I'm working with a class at Chico State and helping them to get through the certifications. They're all receiving Project WILD, Project WET, Project Learning Tree, and 2 early childhood curriculum. Getting Little Feet Wet and Growing Up Wild are the different curriculum that they've gotten trained in this semester. And so I was talking to Larissa about the possibility of providing Project WILD Aquatic to your group, which is aquatic wildlife focused curriculum. And so you go through and you get to know the guide and you learn about the curriculum, and then you're trained and certified to take those activities and use them with children or adults, depending on how you modify them. They're targeted usually K-8 or K-12. But of course, I tend to think that most people's science knowledge level is kind of a upper elementary to like middle school level. And so a lot of activities that are geared toward younger learners can be modified and made really exciting and effective for adults as well. And depending on the type of environment that you're thinking about working in, like being a park ranger and doing some interpretive programs, you're going to want to be able to deliver those programs to young people that are also going to be interesting to the adults that are with them in their journeys. So they really focus on helping you to develop those core activities that you can do with a wide variety of learners. And so their standards aligned curriculum, it's a book that you receive with a series of activities. The activities are all outlined to be user friendly with materials lists and background information that's scientifically vetted so that teachers or other educators can use the books as a jumping off point for bringing wildlife or forestry or watershed into their classroom.
Awesome. Thanks for that explanation. I know Larissa's going to hop on after we're done with the folks today so we can talk about that. But I'll let you move on with whatever else you were going to talk about. Or if anybody has any other questions, feel free to go with them.
Yeah, if you don't have, if you're not moving on to anything, I was wondering with all your position transitions, what keeps you motivated and on track? Because it seems like you're pretty like geared towards your position and you know what you want. But like, how have you, like, taking your jobs that weren't necessarily in the path that you wanted in the direction? How did you keep that, like, keep motivated within that environment?
As for like when working on jobs that I didn't think were like part of my career path, honestly, there were some times when it was difficult and disappointing to be doing some of the things I was doing. I thought I would be somewhere else than where I was at those moments in time, but those expectations were unrealistic, and I needed to do the work I did to take care of myself to be able to continue on a path of finding the type of work that I would find the most fulfilling and interesting. So sometimes those jobs are really hard, you know, and in both, like in addition to wearing the sandwich board, I also at one point was washing dishes for the coffee shop and working in the kitchen. I was terrible at it. I've never been so bad at anything in my life as I was at washing dishes. And if I was like, I have a college degree and I'm washing dishes in a coffee shop, like this is not where I think I belong. But it was absolutely where I belonged because I needed a job and I needed to pay my bills. And it was an opportunity that gave me the flexibility to work on the weekends doing the jobs I really wanted to do, which was working with a nonprofit doing restoration projects, and helped me get through that time. So I think looking toward the future and having some just short-term goal, like I knew when I was working at the coffee shop, I was applying to go and work in AmeriCorps, and I was looking for other opportunities actively throughout that time, and that was really what kept me motivated to go to work at the coffee shop. That, and the job was really generous. They let us make whatever sandwiches or food we wanted and take it home, so food is a good motivator. But it was really knowing that there was something next coming along, you know, this isn't my final ultimate destination. This is a stop along the way, and it's actually helping me get to my next. You just have to remember that that things are stepping stones, you know, and if you use them correctly, they help you move toward where you want to go. And then today, I am staying motivated by having such a variety of things. As the director of the Nature Center, I supervise staff. It's been hard during COVID. I'll tell you, like, I never had to lay off staff before that were doing a really good job, and I really liked them. I've only ever had to let people go that I was not thrilled with their performance. So having had to let go almost, I should have about 30 people working for me at this time of year, between field trip staff, camp staff, preschool staff, nature center general staff, and right now I have one person on my team because field trips are off, camp we're not sure when it's starting, California Naturalist certification we had to cancel because we couldn't do the in-person sessions. So it's definitely not the most fun time in my job right now, but I know that this is, again, a stepping stone toward the future, and we have to endure this. And when I talked to Mark, he reminded me, because I said Larissa asked me to do this on the 10-year anniversary of the oil spill, and that night I called Mark and talked to him, who was my boss during the oil spill, and he talked about taking that long view, you know, the 5 to 7 year view. And so when I was in the coffee shop, I knew I wasn't going to be there for 5 to 7 years. I just wasn't going to do that. And right now I know that it's not going to be that long that I'm going to be without a staff. We're starting to look at going to phase 2 in California. It's starting to reopen, so we probably will have summer camp. It's going to look different than what camp normally looks like. We're going to have smaller groups. We're going to have some restrictions, more cleaning, all kinds of factors that we have to put in place. But we are starting to go more in that direction than it looked like we were going to even a week ago. But Mark's reminder, that 5 to 7 year view, things take time. You know, what is the process you're going to go through, and how are you going to get there at the end?
It looks like Camille has a question. Camille, do you want to ask yours?
Yeah.
Yeah, I can ask it. About to read it word for word from here. Okay, so I have a vision for where I want to end up in the future. I have goals. However, I am contemplating on whether I should go back to school and finish my schooling, or pursue temporary positions or opportunities, or even career opportunities, just to get experience. Do you have any suggestions on what you would think would be a better choice, and do you believe that education is more valuable than experience, or vice versa?
I think they're both super valuable. I think and sometimes that education foundation is the only way to get your foot in the door. Some jobs are not going to consider you if you don't have, whether it's high school, college, advanced degree. It depends on the specific place you want to go, what they're going to be looking for on your resume. Is there a base level entry point that you have to have that degree? Or is there an opportunity to get in there without a degree? You know, you're not going to become a doctor without a formal education. But if you're looking at other fields, it could be very practical to have the experience. And if at all possible, the best combination is both, a little bit of both. Having some firm academic background or technical skills background in the field you want to work in, and then also finding ways to take, if it's volunteer positions, internships, part-time jobs, and doing that networking, because the other piece that's on here is who you know, right? So who have you built relationships with in the world around you as professionals? Who do you have exposure to that has the capacity to help you build your career, and how do you build your relationships with them? Over the years since I've been in Chico, I've worked a lot with the university, and now I want to go to school there. So I know people on the faculty who will write letters of recommendation for me, which is great because I was a terrible college student. I barely got out of college, right? C's get degrees. So I am very lucky to have good people in my network to make up for the fact that I wasn't a great student. So it's all about like rounding out your package, I think, of what you are and what you bring to the table. and knowing what the base level entry is. I mean, if you want to be an arborist, I don't know that you need or a tree climber and, you know, do tree work. I don't know that you need a college degree to do that, but you need to have technical certifications and training and experience to move up in your career. So it is going to depend on what you want to do. You know, if you want to be a researcher, you might need a master's or a PhD. If you want to be a field tech or wildlife tech, maybe you need a master's, maybe you just need a bachelor's degree, and you start building that experience and it keeps on going. Back to masters, waiting to...
Thank you so much.
Sure. So this one says that
undergrad for 3 years now.
Masters. I think especially right now, either the practical experience or the master's degree is going to be a good direction to go in. Some programs like the one you're in right now have educational awards at the end, and those can be great. It's to look at like different AmeriCorps programs. There are some faith-based service programs that provide awards or programs with colleges that they partner with at the end of the program. So there, I think either is a good opportunity. It depends on where you're at with, you know, your personal finances. School can be very expensive. Is that something you're able to afford or get financial aid or loans for? Sometimes it makes more sense to wait a couple of years so you're older than having to list your parents, depending on what their finances look like and yours. So there's a lot of factors to consider. And sometimes you can do a little bit of both. You could go to school part-time, you can work part-time, just pairing up the opportunities that present themselves to you. Is that helpful at all?
It is, but I've already been out of school for 3 years after graduating with my bachelor's. Do you think it would be better to go ahead and get a master's now, sooner, than sitting on it for any longer?
I would say the master's... Do you have a clear picture of what you want to do your master's in and what you want to take and where you want to go with that?
More or less.
Yeah, I mean, I don't see any reason not to go to school if you have a clear idea of what the purpose of a master's degree is. Like, from my perspective, higher level degrees are really focused on a specific thing that you want to excuse me one sec. Master's degree should be like very narrowly focused on what you want to do in your career, so that your thesis points toward your career path or your project points toward your career path. If you know what that is, it's a great time to pursue a master's degree. If you're still kind of like, you know, I'm trying to refine, I'm not sure where I want to go, take some more time in the work world.
Okay.
Because it's a big investment that you're making in a master's degree.
I have another question. Do you have any thoughts on like military service and how that could help in getting a job in the conservation field? It used to always be my backup plan. Then like finally once I got this job, I was like, all right, I'm going to take that off the table as a potential backup plan. But now with everything that's happening, I mean, the military always takes people. So
that is true. What I would say, I know little about the military. I have no personal experience with it. I know some folks. Give me one sec here. I know some folks that have had careers in the military and are out now. It's just hard to know exactly what you're going to do in the military. I mean, they will see what job you want to go into and what job they're going to give you and where they're going to post you. And if you're open to that and to exploring that, it can be very beneficial. There are some benefits to coming out of the military and being a veteran. There are definitely some drawbacks to military service as far as not having control over where you're going to live and how things are going to go for you. What jobs they're going to put you in, whether or not you're going to see active combat and the implications for that on your psyche. are huge. So there's definitely a lot to consider for military service. From personal experience, I can't say whether it's good or bad, and a lot of that I think relates to your ethics too, of like what you think you want to do with your life. Yeah.
I'd like to add to that. I talked to a recruiter with Coast Guard a year or so ago, and the recruiter was pretty honest with me and said I could do officer school and everything and still be put on a ship for 2 years. So you're not guaranteed in any way to be doing anything environmentally related or what you want to.
What is the best order? Is it to get the BSMS or experience first or at the same time? My path was, it was easy for me to go to college. I had support through my family to do my bachelor's degree. And that just seemed like the logic. I didn't have any idea what I wanted to do with life. It just was like, go to college. So I did that. And then it's taken me, I'm 36 now, almost 37, to figure out where I want to do my master's degree. And I've gotten a lot of different experience along the way. I think that what the right path is for everybody is a little different. If you know exactly where you want to go with that master's degree and you have a clear idea of what you want to do a thesis on or a project on, jump in and get your master's. Now is going to be a good time to not be doing a huge, heavy job search and looking for more internships and volunteer things with the way the economy looks like it's shaping up for the next few years. But if you're not sure what you want to do, I wouldn't advise anyone to get a master's degree or even a bachelor's degree if you don't have a clear path for it. You know, everyone's situation is going to be different with finances, with choice of things you want to study, where you want to go, how you want to get there. So if it makes sense in your world to jump in and get your bachelor's and then run straight onto your master's, some people do the whole thing in 5 years. Other people stretch it out and they're in school for 10, 15 years. You know, just taking things one at a time, slowly collecting courses. And I don't personally think either is right or wrong. It's just what makes sense in your life and what you're able to afford and what you're able to prioritize and when you know what you want out of life. You know, like I had a friend in college, she wanted to be a surgeon. She knew that very clearly. She had no doubts in her mind. She was a biology major. She didn't get test scores high enough to go into med school right away. So she went and worked in a hospital till she could get her scores even higher. Went to med school, and has done all the things. She's a colorectal surgeon now. You know, she knew that was her path. She went from one type of surgery to the other type of surgery, which is the only change in that path. She thought she was going to be like a breast cancer surgeon. She wound up a colorectal surgeon. But she had a very clear understanding of where she wanted to go and the path that she wanted to take to get there. And if you have that, then follow that path. But a lot of people don't. I certainly didn't. I didn't know exactly what I wanted and how to get there. So you look for different opportunities to find your way to something that's really exciting to you, hopefully. I really am grateful that I have a job that I really enjoy. And I hope that for everyone, that they find something that they can be passionate about, they can feel good about going to work every day. You know, it's not just for the paycheck, it's for yourself, you know, like your overall feeling of accomplishment in life and feeling a sense of purpose in what you do and that you're contributing to the world in a way that you feel good about.
Awesome. Thanks, Caitlin. Well, just to keep us on time, it's almost 2 o'clock. So if there's anybody who has like one more question, I think we can fit that in. If not, I wanted to just say thanks. We had another presenter yesterday who spoke about her personal career path, and I think you guys had a lot like that kind of went together. So it's awesome to see like 2 different individuals like saying similar things, but each having their own path. It's funny because she was she always wanted to be a marine biologist, and she stuck with that like for her whole life. And then, but she also said like she jumped all over the place. So it's interesting to see how it changed per individual. But really wanted to say thank you for taking the time to speak with us today. And I think Larissa, are you out there? you wanted to speak real quick, but I think
Yeah, I am. Caitlin, do you mind